Hello, everybody. My name is Sylvain Rochon. I am the Paradise Engineer, and here's another installment with another article I wrote recently, and most of it today. I want to talk about how we can create our own reality, and how is it a quick guide to happiness in the fourth industrial revolution, specifically. Now, this sounds like a very fluffy piece, but it's extremely practical because I'm going to be talking about technology, biology, how the brain works, right? Creating your own reality is not something from science fiction. It's not something that is odd in any way. Um, Again, I'm very practical, and it becomes important to be able to do that, to create your own reality in your own real life in the fourth industrial revolution. And the reason for that is the fourth industrial revolution that we are currently in now, and we can even argue we're started a fifth industrial revolution without the fourth one even ending in many ways. But you can read my article. I do write a little bit about that. It's in the down below in the description. But the reason this is important to create your own reality to be happy in this time is because everything is moving so fast, everything is changing constantly. There is an exponential amount of change constantly. That means it will never stop changing. It'll never stabilize into something recognizable that we can depend on for years to come. Our environment, our society, our economy is constantly going to be changing, and it's going to be changing faster and faster. And the issue with the speed of change is that we are just not made for constant change. Like on an organic level, we're kind of designed to live in cycles. You know, we sleep very regularly, we tend to eat regularly. So exponential changes in the environment is kind of unnatural. It feels unnatural to us from a biological point of view. So it takes a bit of a mindset change. It takes a bit of consciousness to adapt to it so that we are comfortable with it. And that requires some kind of reprogramming of our own brain. And once we become comfortable with a world that constantly changes, then we can kind of relax and feel happy and just have things kind of flow and change all around us without us being worried about it. And it's this type of change is not about reducing the speed of things or not being progressive or trying to be conservative in that sense. It's really about a change of how your brain works. And thankfully, we know, thanks to neuroplasticity principles, the term has been around for years now. So you guys, if you haven't heard it, then you have. Neuroplasticity is how our brain essentially is able to adapt to new situations and conditions, and our thinking, because of that, our thinking can change. The neurons and the connections between our neurons are what makes us us. And that's how if you change the way our brain is connected, then our thinking changes, because that is by definition how we think. So neuroplasticity is our way, our doorway to change the way we see the world. So we're not changing the world around us. It's changing on its own because of billions of different factors and modification. That's the accelerated aspect of the change, where it's not only slow humans that are affecting change all on our own. Now there's all these automated systems that are affecting change constantly, way faster than we can move. And we're just kind of floating about in that mix of changes, constantly caught in all this stuff going on that we don't necessarily understand, that we don't agree with. So instead of fighting what's going out here, and that is automated and kind of moving forward at a breakneck speed, What we can control is how our brain is connected inside here. That is fully under your control, constantly under your control, and we're not using it properly, most of us, because we're kind of used to doing things at a certain pace, at the pace of natural, organic, biological life. So that's the traditional way of moving. That's how our parents did it. That's how our grandparents did it. But we have to kind of think of the world around us in a different framework. We can't really stop and imagine that things are kind of freezing around us to make us comfortable. That's just not the way it works. It's just not stable enough. Things are continuously progressing. So we have to become comfortable with constant change. We have to be able to adapt to the unadaptable. Now, as things progress, and I'm giving more details and statistics and links in the article below, this is just going to exacerbate. If you're not comfortable about the rate of change now, next year is going to be worse, and the following year is going to be worse. Now, how do you change your perception of things? Well, that's pretty simple, actually. What you need to do, you need to kind of come to terms with the fact that changes are happening. You have to just first intellectually come to terms with it. It's like, look, everything's going to be changing constantly. All right. Just accept that, right? The second part is a little bit harder. You have to create your own reality, and a reality where you are a comfortable person inside that fluctuating environment. Now, how's that done? Well, the brain has an amazing functionality, and it's how it learns. It learns using mirror neurons. And what those do, essentially, it just imitates whatever's in front of you, whatever you perceive in your environment, and it restructures your brain to match your reality that's around you. So we are constantly a victim of our own environment because of those. If you're not consciously trying to modify them to what you want, your environment will change you to what it is. And the more time you spend in a certain environment with certain friends, family, individuals, or certain environment, like at sea versus being constantly on trains, or these everything in your environment. It's not only the people, it's just, is there a lot of wind or not? Everything impacts and kind of restructures your brain just automatically. Okay, and the brain does that because it wants to use the least amount of energy for the long term. So it kind of uses these mirror neurons to kind of just match everything that's going on around. And at first it's an effort if it's different. And then over time, since environments don't change a whole lot usually, then the amount of friends, the types of friends that you have around you, and things like that. I mean, some of these things don't really change because we tend to be creatures of habit. That's what I mean. And you're becoming your environment over time, just at a subconscious level. It just kind of happens. And so we want to use those mirror neurons to make us adaptable to the unpredictable. And that's the point. But that's the theory, at least. So what you need is, if you want to adapt to unpredictable things, well, you have to accept first, and then you have to be engaged in the unpredictable. You have to expose yourself to that condition as much as possible. Mirror neurons will do their work. It'll create new neurons in your brain, or new connections between neurons, more specifically. And you'll become comfortable with change. So hiding in your house and denying that all these changes are happening, and not engaging in the technology, and not engaging with what's going on in the world, makes you more likely to want to remain the same, and you'll have more difficulty with the exponential changes that are going on in the outside world around you. It's harder for you to live in that environment. But if you engage with the changes and you force changes yourself and you get yourself used to it, then it becomes easy to be inside a change, and it becomes your new modus operandi, like your new MO is constantly be within the change, be adaptable within it, be comfortable with it. It becomes your new reality. So as the more you engage with the changing environment and the technology and all the information, the more accustomed your brain is to that, because it learns, it copies, and makes these neuron pathways, and then that becomes your more normal. And strangely enough, if you're in that state for a certain point, a certain amount of time, then you become conversely uncomfortable with things that don't change. But that's okay, because change is exponential now. So you'll be very comfortable with constantly changing schedules. You'll start becoming comfortable with eating at different times of day. Your brain is just wired differently after a while. You're just used to constant change around you. But that's the reality of the fourth industrial revolution, or fifth or sixth, moving forward. We'll be exposed to all these changes constantly. So best be comfortable with it. So rewire your brain by exposing yourself to it. Get it changed to a state where it's your new reality, and that becomes how you see things. Ergo, and therefore, your new reality is what you perceive as comfortable, fast-paced changes constantly, and it's not scary anymore. And if it's not scary, it doesn't generate any negative emotions, and that's a good baseline position to feel happy in that breakneck situation where things are moving at 100,000 kilometers an hour all around you. Because happiness is really just a feeling. It's not a defined state of matter. It's not energy either. It's a feeling. It's how you feel. And happiness is connected to comfort. And comfort means, not having to use a lot of energy to deal with what's around you. So you have to adapt to it, be the master of the unavoidable, become like it, and then you don't use a lot of energy inside that space. Happiness, no discomfort. And that's where we should be going. And if more of us would be in that state, we wouldn't have as many resistances to some of the more beneficial types of changes that are coming up. Artificial intelligence, the future of work. Like, do we need to work for a living anymore? No, we don't. We can change that. And we can, if you're used to change, you don't mind changing that, especially since it's such a beneficial concept. And we can figure out how it can work together. How about longevity, like living forever? This is becoming a possibility within the next 20 years. Let's start being comfortable with that idea. It requires genetic engineering and some new treatments, treating the aging process in our body. Yeah, it's all right. If you're comfortable with these all sorts of weird changes that are non-traditional and unusual, well, let's look into that. I'm comfortable with the concept. Well, let's look at how we can make it safe. Let's look at how it's going to impact society and how we can change our economy to adapt to that. It's beneficial. It's healthy. So if it's healthy, it must be good. And we can make it very good if we implement it in a healthy way. And we can put calm thought to it and make it work. Positions of fear are positions of discomfort. And it usually stops us from doing things that can save lives, or doing things that are going to be just strictly beneficial for people. Just say, well, it's always worked this way. Let's not change it, even though we know people are dying or sick by this method or this old technique. Old does not mean better. On the contrary, usually it means worse. New is usually an improvement. That's why we adopt new things. So let's get comfortable with new. Let's get comfortable with change. Let's get comfortable and happy being engaged in all the changes that are happening that are super positive if they are directed towards the good of people. And that's the real message. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed it. Read the article, read my other writings, and if you have any comments and you want to share some thoughts of yours, please feel free to do so. Thanks a lot.